Thanks, Romil and Nidhi. I guess this is a great opportunity for people to learn about as a service platforms. And this is a great event by Thoughtworks. Um, I'll start off by sharing my screen. Just a second, guys. Okay. So, hey guys, good morning. And thank you for tuning in for this great event by Thoughtworks. Without further ado, let's get started. So I'll be talking today about AI as a service and the kind of impact that it is making on the market right now. We'll start with a short introduction. My name is Adyot Kumar Srivastava, and I am a business analyst with Coffee Beans Consulting. You can connect with me on LinkedIn if you find the topic interesting and want to talk about it further. So let's talk, before we go to AI as a service, let's first talk about what AI is. I understand most of the people are tech enabled right now and know what an AI is, but we'll start with a very basic definition. So AI refers to a system or machine that mimics human intelligence to perform tasks and can iteratively improve themselves based on the information they collect. In a very simple language, an AI is something that can do what a human does and will be able to learn once it makes any mistakes from the data that it collects. Now, how does an AI basically work? I understand that there's a lot that goes behind an AI, and I guess the time here won't be enough to go through each of those details. I've taken a very simplistic explanation of how an AI would work. So let's go through that. So we start off with the training data and a model algorithm. So a training data is generally something that goes into the AI as a set of inputs and outputs for this particular system. When you combine this with a model, you come up with a trained model. So this is basically the model that will give you a prediction for your particular situation. And how this works is later you feed in some live data into this model, which will be able to give you some predicted data. I'll take an example to simplify this for everyone on the call. Let's take an example of a fraud detection system in a bank. An AI that does fraud detection would be trained on a lot of data of past frauds that have been detected by people. And finally, we would have come up with a trained model. This trained model, when it looks at the data that is ongoing, the live data for all banking transactions, it may be able to identify similarities and may be able to predict the frauds that are happening. So that's basically how an AI works. Now let's look at what AI as a service means. I guess we have talked about as a service a lot over the past 2 days, but just to summarize it, an AI as a service is something that is an off-the-shelf AI tool, and this would enable companies to implement and scale AI techniques at a fraction of the time and the cost. This would be an alternative to building your in-house AI. So it's a much shorter route to take to get AI on your platform. The reason we are enabled to do this is because of cloud computing, because then AI becomes available over a network. There are different types of application areas for AI as a service platforms. I would categorize them into two. One is a general use case. A general use case is something like natural language processing or recommendations. When I say recommendations, you can think about the recommendation section when you're browsing Amazon.in. So that's where you see recommendations similar to the products that you're browsing. And secondly, there can be some industry specific use cases, such as medicine or manufacturing. So think of a manufacturing facility where all the equipments have some kind of an IoT tech attached to them. And all of this data is being fed into a common database. An AI would be able to predict what kind of a performance this particular manufacturing facility has, and if or not there are any issues that are going to arise in the upcoming future, given the performance of these equipments. Yeah. So now let's look at what are the kinds of AI as a service offerings out there in the market. I would categorize them under three. Type one would be an out-of-the-box offering. So when I say out of the box, this means that it's very straightforward to implement in your system once you subscribe to it. So what you do is you go to an AI as a service platform and you ask them for exposing some kind of AI so that you can integrate it in your system. This AI that this platform is providing has been trained on the data that is being collected by this particular AI service provider. So let's take an example of AWS. AWS is providing us many AI platforms right now. These have been trained on the data that has also been collected and owned by AWS right now. So there's least effort for us to get it off the ground, and there's no cost for data collection. So this kind of a solution is fit for general use cases. The second kind of an offering is proprietary retraining. So this would mean that, let's say you have a more specific use case and you want your data to be used for creating the model. In this case, the model would be provided, or the AI would basically be provided to us by an AI as a service provider, while you as a company would be collecting data and providing it to them for a training of that particular model, which you can then use in your platform. The reason this is useful is because you may have an industry specific use case and you may want the AI to be specific to that. The problem with this kind of a solution is that it takes more time to get it off the ground, because there's a lot of cost of data collection. Along with that, there's the effort itself of going and collecting that data from various sources. Now let's look at the third kind of AI as a service offering. This is called transfer learning. A transfer learning kind of a solution would be a hybrid of the last two models that I took you through. So you already get an AI trained by, let's say, AWS, which has been trained on their particular data set. But you also have some data which you then use to come up with a refined model. Let's take an example. AWS basically provides computer vision models. So when you go to AWS, you will get a solution where once you scan something with your camera, it may be able to identify what is it that you can see in the image that you have clicked. But you may have a specific set of products that you wanted to identify. So you can train it based on your own data set, and you will be able to come up with a more refined model. I understand that this is a lot of theory. So now let's look at a live example. So I'll go to AWS service demos. So these are a very small subset of the as a service offerings in the AI domain that AWS has made available to us. We'll quickly look at two of these offerings. The first one is Amazon Recognition. Amazon Recognition is a tool that basically allows you to scan an image or a video and get an analysis of what it is that is identified in this particular video. Let us detect what is there in my image. So on the right side, you see a bunch of results. You see that these are the things that have been identified by this particular AI. There is a face, there's a person, there's a human. Obviously, there's a beard. On the right side, you see the confidence level. By confidence level, we mean that this is the confidence with which this particular model is able to say that there is a face in this particular image. So with 99% confidence, this AI is able to tell us that there is a face. And with 55% confidence, it is able to tell us that there is a photo. We'll use another example. This is called Amazon Comprehend. Now, the previous solution was for an image or a video. This is for text. So if you want to identify a text, you can use this tool. I'll just put in something here. Hi, this is Adyot and I am happy. Now, once you analyze this, you'll see an analysis on the right side. There is a bunch of sentiment analysis. Apart from that, there is some other analysis that has been done over the phrases that are used in this particular sentence. You'll see that the sentiment is positive. As intended, it's pretty evident on the left side that I intend to showcase a positive emotion. Let's change it a little bit. I made it, I'm not happy. It changes to negative. So basically, this is able to detect what kind of an emotion I'm showing in this particular sentence. There are some other solutions provided by other service providers as well, and similar demos available all over the internet. You can go through some of these and you'll be able to get a better hang of how these services work. And let's come back to the PPT now. So what are the common usages for an AI as a service offering? Now, let's imagine a scenario. You are working in your company and you have identified a particular situation where an implementation of an AI would be able to solve a lot of issues, would be able to maybe add a lot of business value. But how do you confirm that there is in fact a business value created? You will go out in the market and you will look at some of the AI as a service solutions, which are pretty similar to what you're thinking, and you'll come up with that and implement it in your current workflow. Then you will be able to identify whether or not it is actually creating value. If it is creating value, that is only when you would want to go ahead and build your own in-house AI. And this is really good because you don't have to put all of that cost and effort into building your own AI before confirming that value is created. The second thing that AI as a service platforms can be used for is benchmarking your model. So let's say you're working on an AI now, you have identified it is creating value. How do you check whether it's performing well? You'll pick up an AI as a service offering out there in the market, and you'll compare it with the model that you are building, and you'll be able to tell how well it is doing. The third one is data labeling. So let's say you are running a social media campaign. How do you know if your social media campaign is doing well? You'll try to extract the data from Twitter and you'll pass it off into a sentiment analysis AI, very similar to something that I just showcased before this slide. And you'll be able to get what kind of a sentiment is being shown towards your campaign. And the fourth is pretty straightforward, integrating into your applications. You may not want to build your own AI. You may just want to get the benefits of an AI that are out there in the market. So all you need to do is go and subscribe to one of these services, and you can integrate it in your application. An example would be a chatbot for an e-commerce platform, which does not want to build an AI. Now let's look at the market size. The market size for Indian AI as a service platforms is expected to reach 300 billion by 2030, which is a pretty great market. And although there's a common perception that AI is reducing jobs, there have been multiple researches which suggest that the differential would be bigger, which means that more jobs would be created and less would be replaced. Let's look at the advantages of AI as a service offerings. The very first advantage is the competitive advantage. Take an example of two e-commerce platforms, one which has an AI chatbot, one which doesn't. If you have an AI chatbot, you will be able to reduce a lot of your cost in terms of customer service, and it will be a more faster and streamlined experience for your customers as well, hence giving you a competitive advantage. The second advantage for AI as a service offerings is that you don't need AI or ML expertise to actually bring AI into your system. You can just go and subscribe to something, bring it into your application, integrate it. The third reason is scalability. If you're scaling faster, you probably don't want to go ahead and build an in-house AI and having to update it as you go along. You can basically subscribe to any of the services. The fourth one is easier to perform a POC. POC means a proof of concept. So basically, if you want to go ahead and build your own AI, you might as well first use an AI as a service offerings, build a proof of concept, and if it works, then go ahead and put all of that effort. And the fifth one, the most straightforward one, is reduced cost of building an AI, because you are not building it yourself. So there's a lot of cost that you can avoid. Let's delve a little deeper into what the cost comparison is. For a typical in-house AI, you would end up spending around $6,000 to $300,000 to build it. And for an AI as a service platform, it can cost anywhere from $0 to $40,000. $0 because there are some free AI as a service platforms also available out in the market. And on an average, if you see AI as a service solutions cost around 15% of the cost of building an in-house AI. That's a huge difference. These are some of the common cloud platforms. I took you guys through the AWS platform. There are some other provided in the market as well that you can go through. This is just a very small list. I can assure you there's a lot in the market that's going right now. So there are a lot more platforms out there. Let's talk a little about future of AI as a service. I guess right now we are in the phase where most of the AIs out there in the market are weak AIs. And there's a lot of potential for AIs to grow in the market right now because we are at a very nascent stage. With the advent of strong AI, a lot of work going on around that, along with great strides in the field of IoT and robotics, I guess time is not very far where we will be able to see robots maybe as a service. So that idea would also be backed by the concept of AI as a service. Yeah, so that's what I think about the future of AI. Thank you, everyone. And this has been a great session. Apart from that, as I believe that as businesses, there is a lot of trends that are going out there in the market, and these trends are regularly changing. And to adapt to these, AI as a service offerings are the best solution available out there so that you can adapt and make use of those trends. Yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you, guys.